Second grade friends, I am back with our virtual social studies lesson number 3. We are going to revisit our fact finder book from Jack and Annie about ancient Greece and the Olympics. Yesterday we learned all about the gods, and I think it's really cool how each god had their own superpower, so to speak, and that they would say that if Poseidon was mad, he would take his fork, for lack of a better description. Let's look back at the book for an exact name. So this is what we do. It's called a trident. So we look back in our book for information. He would take his trident and he was mad. He would hit it on the sea and then the sea would go crazy and a storm would come. I also love the connection to Athena, which was Zeus's daughter, to Athens. So there's a lot of words that ancient Greeks had originated or had started that we still use today. So today's lesson is chapter 3, Daily Life in Ancient Greece. I think this is going to be pretty interesting because we can see how the ancient Greeks lived every day and we can compare it to our everyday life. Okay, so let's see. Greek cities were usually protected by walls. The walled sections of Athens was called the Acropolis. It stood on a hill overlooking the city. People did not live on the Acropolis. They lived in houses and apartments in the city below. So this is the Acropolis right here. Can you see it? Standing on a hill, very, very top. Let's see if nobody lived there. Let's see what they used it for. Much of daily life in Athens and ancient Greece took place in the Agora. The Agora was the marketplace. It was crowded with stalls selling food, crafts, and other household items. In Athens, men usually did all the shopping. They often met in the Agora to visit and chat about the news of the day. There were also important public buildings, temples, and houses in the Agora. I'm thinking back to our magic treehouse with Jack and Annie with Vacation Under the Volcano, and I'm thinking that a forum in Rome is an opening where they have all gatherings and marketplace, but in Greece it's called Agora. Very similar in where they would go and get everything they needed, from food to items to craft items, but they called it Agora. Houses. Greek houses and apartment buildings were made of stone, clay, or wood. The roofs were made of tile or reeds. Inside, there were usually very few rooms. The floors were made of packed dirt or stone. There were wooden chairs, tables, and couches. The family stored their things in baskets or chests. Couches were often used for sleeping as well as sitting. And people came from all over to sell their goods in the Agora. So think about farmers where they have chickens and they might come from far away. They load up all the eggs into a basket and they put it on a cart and they tow it and walk all those miles so they can sell it at the market. If you ever go to the mall where they have those little kiosks set up where they can sell certain things, a little bit different because they're not selling items that are necessary for living like they're doing here for food. Agora comes from the Greek word that means to come together. That makes sense because they're all coming together. In the middle of the house stood an open courtyard. In good weather, the family gathered there to relax. Greeks cooked in clay pots. The 3 legs helped the pot balance on their rough dirt floors. Sometimes the family cooked and ate their meals in the courtyard. They often ate bread, olive oil, goat cheese, and a porridge made of grains. They also ate figs, grapes, and honey. If you remember, figs, grapes, and honey they made from the bees, but figs and grapes, they would grow in Greece, so they were able to use the things that they grew. Women spent most of the time in the house. When they left, a female slave went with them. So here's a neat diagram of what a Greek house looks like. My favorite is the courtyard in the middle. Reminds me of a patio or a deck where you can go out and you can grill and you can sit outside and dine. It's my way of living, sitting outside and eating. Clothing and grooming. Remember, grooming is how you take care of yourself. Greek clothes were very simple. Everyone wore a rectangular piece of cloth called a tunic. Men wore tunics called chitons that came to the knee. Women and girls wore a longer tunic called peplus. Greek men and women used scented oils in their hair. Greeks often went barefoot at home, At other times, they wore sandals, slippers, or boots. To dress like an ancient Greek. If you would like to try this at home, make sure you get your parents' permission. I'll read you the directions and then I'm going to show it to you if you want to take a picture of it. Get an old sheet, fold it in half, wrap it around your body, pin it at the shoulders, tie a belt around your waist, and don't trip. So there's the directions, and here's the picture. That might be something that we do for a Zoom at the end of this unit. Rich women wore jewelry and makeup. Sometimes they put white powdered lead on their faces to look pale. Men often went to barbershops to get their hair cut and to see their friends. One Greek man wrote that barbershops were like parties without wine. This ancient Greek painting shows a woman looking at herself in a polished bronze mirror. Men still go to barbershops today. Well, women go to get their hair cut too, but they don't call it a barbershop. Education. Schools in ancient Greece were just for boys. What? I don't like that. In Athens, boys began school when they were 7 years old. The boys learned reading, writing, and poetry. They also studied music and sports. Sports were very important in ancient Greece. The Greeks believed in a strong mind and a healthy body. Slaves sometimes went to school with boys to make them behave. Clever. So I like that their belief in strong mind and a healthy body, but I do not like that only boys can go to school. Not fair, right, girls? In Athens, girls stayed home and learned how to run a house. Most mothers taught their daughters to spin, weave, sew, and cook. If a girl was rich, she usually learned to read and write at home. When they say spin, it doesn't mean spin around. There was a tool that they would use, and they would have yarn that they would put on there, and it would spin it to make a design where you can have a sweater, you can make a hat if they needed it, you can make some sort of clothing. So when they spun, it meant for the wool or for the cloth that they were making. Spartan boys went away to military schools when they were 7 years old. Their schools taught them how to be soldiers. In Sparta, girls had more freedom than in Athens. Although they didn't go to school, they learned sports, singing, and dancing. Their main job was to grow up and produce strong Spartan boys. When a boy was born, the family hung an olive wreath over the door to celebrate. And when a girl was born, her family hung wool over the door. So when a girl is born, the family hangs wool, which is, again, similar to a sweater. And when a boy, they hung a wreath over the door. Today, a lot of us have wreaths on our door. Think of Christmas, think of different holidays, think of just a circular shape on your door. Maybe that goes back to Greek times. Marriage. Greek girls and women seldom met men who were not in their family. When male visitors arrived, women and girls went into a separate room. But girls in Athens married very young. They were usually only 15 years old. Their fathers chose their husbands, and the men were often much older, in their 30s. So here is a picture of women making cloth. You can see how they're spinning the cloth and they're making the cloth. Remember, they made their own clothes. There's no Target, there's no Macy's, there's no Nordstrom. They made their clothes and they would bring it to the city town and they would sell it. Before marriage, girls presented all their toys to the goddess Artemis. This meant that childhood had come to an end. Artemis was the goddess of wild things as well as protector of the young. Fun. My fun. Ancient Greeks did many things for fun. Some children enjoyed board games that were almost like checkers and chess. Greek boys and girls played with hoops and dolls. They also played with animals made out of clay or wood. Greeks often danced and played music. They had a lot of different dances. There were dances to honor the gods. There were dances for weddings and dances for funerals. There were also dances for harvest time, when they're picking their crops, and for victory in war. Children kept pets like birds, dogs, mice, turtles, and goats. Shepherds even played music to their sheep. And the picture that I'm going to show you is these figures show people playing a popular ancient Greek game called Knucklebones. Knucklebones, that's a silly name. So they had games like we have games. Maybe different, but we have games, we have family time. During the day, boys and men spent time at the gymnasium or the gym. The gymnasium was like a park where people went to play sports and exercised. In the evening, men sometimes gave parties called symposium. These parties were for men only. Except for slave girls, women and girls were not allowed. Servants met guests at the door and washed their feet. Everyone drank wine, ate, and talked. Sometimes they recited poetry and sang. The ancient Greeks had busy lives. They enjoyed their family and their friends. They liked parties, music, and dance. Like people today, they spent time playing sports and keeping fit. But for many Greeks, at the very center of life was a love of learning and beauty. Gymnasium comes from the Greek word that means to exercise. During parties, men lay on couches. Sometimes they wore flowers in their hair. So we call it a gym, where it's a place to exercise. So like I said in the beginning of the lesson, some ancient Greek terms have fallen into our vocabulary. So here's a picture that goes along with this passage. Okay. Okay, last little bit in this chapter, olive trees. The Greeks love their olives and they make olive oil. I hate to tell you, the Italians love their olives and their olive oil too. A lot of similarities. Olive trees grow well in the dry, rocky soil of Greece. The ancient Greeks believed Athenia gave the first olive trees to Athens. Over the years, they became very important to ancient Greece. Olive trees are very strong. They can survive heavy winds and dry weather. The Greeks believed they were symbols of strength and peace. In some city-states, it was a serious crime to cut one down. People think some olive trees today are over 2,000 years old. So I bet you if you travel to Greece, maybe those trees are quite old. The Greeks cleaned their skin with olive oil and used it in their hair. One Greek poet called olive oil liquid gold. So here they are with long sticks poking the trees to get the olives to come down. If any of you have ever gone apple picking, I mean, it's kind of similar. I mean, yes, you can poke a tree to get the apples to come down, although they come down and they get bruised and you don't want to eat them. But they poke the tree and they get the olives to come down, just like we pick the apples from it. So my friends, that is the end of chapter 3, family life. I found a lot of similarities with things that we still do and codes for and names for different things that we still have, like gymnasium. I know a lot, we always use olives and olive oil, especially like I said, olive oil in our cooking. So I think it's really cool that ancient Greece and some of their terms still hold true today. Okay, friends, hope you enjoyed that part of social studies virtual lesson. Have a great day.